All across Jamaica, the complaints are the same. Driving and walking on the roads require the same amount of energy as navigating an obstacle course. Prime Minister Andrew Holiness reiterated that heavy rains in late 2024 contributed to the problem.
Old and aging infrastructure that was not properly maintained over the last 30 years of underinvestment and worsening, and then, Mr. Speaker, the worsening effects of climate change, destroying that infrastructure.
To blame the appalling state of the road network in Jamaica today on climate change is just totally disingenuous. The reality is that there has been an absence of any proper road maintenance policy for years. And you have been in office for 9 years, so you have superintended 9 years of neglect over the maintenance of Jamaica's road network, for which the people are holding you accountable now.
Opposition leader Mark Golding threw punches at the JLP administration for abandoning policies such as a road maintenance fund. But for Mr. Holiness, a road maintenance fund, for example, comes with administrative expenses. Plus,
the funds generated from this special tax was never enough in the first place. In other words, even with the existence of a road maintenance fund, Jamaica's road in 2015, 2014, 2013, and 2011 were in no better condition than they were today. The same protests that existed about bad roads existed then that existed now. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that the road maintenance fund had no impact.
Despite the growth in fiscal space, which is a result of the reforms and the successful execution of the IMF program under the Portia-Simpson-Miller administration, which has yielded a great legacy to this country, you have not used those resources on the road network. You have used it on a proliferation of other things. And to say that climate change is responsible for all of the potholes in the country is absolute nonsense. And the people don't believe it, and they don't accept it, and you're going to pay the consequences of it politically in the months to come.
A general election is expected this year. So, what's the fix? The Prime Minister reminded the country that a road patching program is on the way.
This phase is expected to continue until the end of March 2025. Currently, the mitigation program is 55% complete, and I am confident that we will meet our targets within the planned time frame, providing much-needed relief to our citizens.
14 Grade 1 contractors have been mobilized. Still, there are concerns.
There are concerns that have been raised regarding the patching, that the contractors patch a piece, and then there's a little pothole beside it. They leave that little pothole and they've gone to another piece. We have interrogated that. Of course, the claim is that they are being economical. They don't want to focus on the small potholes. They want to focus on the big ones because that makes the driving surface easier. But we have said to them, look, patch the road properly. A small pothole left will become a big one. So just patch it now.
Mr. Holiness reiterated that under the SPARK program, more extensive road repairs will be done to include drainage.
The target is that we will probably have between 600 and 660 roads that will be improved island-wide under the SPARK program. That, Mr. Speaker, will have a massive impact.
So the Prime Minister blamed the People's National Party and the change of climate, the weather, for the bad state of road in Jamaica. Now, if you are in power for the past 9 years and people are suffering to find proper road for drive on, and you can blame the People's National Party for that, that simply means you still not remember, say, are you in a government? Now, you get up every single day of your life. I blame the PNP for every single thing with the happening in this country. That simply means you're still not sure if you're in a government, you know. Or you just try to use your head for the people. Because if you are in government for 9 long years, that is enough to fix these roads. Because you're not going to take 2-3 years to fix these roads. But for the past 9 years, all me see you they do, Mr. Prime Minister, is point finger at the other party. You get as much time to correct things, but you can't even fix the road, much more to fix the country. So that simply means you're not fit to be in government. So it better if you go back on the opposition side, where you can just look in, because at the end of the day, you're not doing anything for Jamaica. You're talking about economy, when the economy are decline. That's all I get up and talk about, economy, and the economy are decline. The road condition in Jamaica is a national disgrace, just like the healthcare sector and the education sector and everywhere you turn in Jamaica. It is a national disgrace and jewelness. But people, Mark Golding rocks him up, and we have Mark Golding for play to the people. But before we go to Mark Golding, bless up to my viewers and my subscribers. I hope everybody having a blessed and a wonderful morning. Now my viewers and my subscribers, remember, in everything you do, always put God first in every any situation. Just always remember to call upon God. Always remember to pray, because a prayer day keep the devil away. Now my viewers and my subscribers, we have a lot coming up inside this update, so you definitely don't want to miss none. So watch the video until the end. Remember, leave a like on this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed as yet. Put it in the comment section. Andrew must resign. Andrew must resign. Leave a like on the video and share the content. Alright? Make a run the intro and come back. We're so forward.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has delivered a speech akin to a budget speech. Many of the things he included in his speech today are things that were in his budget speech last year in March. And we've heard it several times since. But you know, what that speech that the Prime Minister just made reflects is really a pretense at accepting responsibility, but in reality seeking to dodge responsibility. Climate change. To blame the appalling state of the road network in Jamaica today on climate change is just totally disingenuous. The reality is that there has been an absence of any proper road maintenance policy for years. And you have been in office for 9 years, so you have superintended 9 years of neglect over the maintenance of Jamaica's road network, for which the people are holding you accountable now. And that's just the reality of it. There used to be a road maintenance fund, which was established and funded to support road maintenance programs. That was put to an end under the JLP government to help to finance some of the loans that were taken from China, as it was in that case, to finance some of the major road projects. Jamaica's had decades of major road projects, but very little road maintenance. And what bothers me about your approach is that it's going to continue into the future if you are allowed to continue in government. There will be inadequate maintenance as a permanent feature of your government's regime, because you're continuing to be fixated on major road projects, because no doubt the benefits that flow, that can be the collateral benefits that flow from those major road projects, of which we are all aware. But the road maintenance, which is what the people want to see, the interior roads, the community roads, even the scheme roads, which you said the government is not responsible for. The government fixes the entire parameters of how roads are addressed in the country. The decision whether to take over or leave roads without any proper superintendent is a government decision. You can't shirk responsibility for scheme roads because you say developers developed it and it was never handed over. These are schemes which have been in this situation for year after year after year with no proper arrangement for dealing with the fixing of the roads in those schemes. So you said something about when you start to shout, the stone lick. Well, apparently it doesn't lick. That's why you're shouting at me now. Yeah. So Mr. Speaker.
Hold for me, please. Let us conduct ourselves in an honorable way. You may continue.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker.
Wait, man. No, there's a line.
This side there that climate change caused the bad roads in Jamaica. Mash down that lie. It has nothing to do with it. We have had heavy rain from time to time in Jamaica for years. Climate change is a reality and it's coming at us. But to blame the poor state of the road network of the country on climate change is a farce. And the people of Jamaica don't believe it.
Leader.
They're holding you accountable
Opposition
for it.
leader.
And for you to try and pretend that it's a PNP responsible for it.
Opposition
you've been in government
leader.
for 9 years. It just does not wash.
Member, you rise on a point of order or?
What's the point? What's the point?
What are you rising on?
What's the point of order? What is the point of
There's no
order?
such thing as a point of clarity.
Mr. Speaker,
The point of
What
order.
is the point of
the
order?
member
What's the
is
point of
misleading
order?
us as it relates to housing scheme. And he knows that.
What's the
I
point
brought
of
a
order?
resolution here.
What's the point
No,
of order?
is that are you rising a point of order?
Clarification. You can
No,
clarification.
member.
That you brought a resolution here.
Member.
So what?
Point of order.
So what?
Point of order.
So what?
Point of order.
Point of order.
Members,
Many people bring
He
resolutions.
mentioned
Let
the
us-
issue.
So what?
stop. I'm going to turn the mics. All right? I'm asking a question. If you allow me, you will hear. I am asking a question. Remember, you know. All right, I will overrule because he's having a side chat. You may continue.
He said you abandoned it.
Finish the speech, man.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that you allow me to finish.
No.
Are you now ready to take the point of order? Yes, I am. All right. You may. You may.
Mr. Speaker, because you're speaking, not abandon this issue. He mentioned housing scheme that this government abandoned those housing scheme, not fixing them. Under the last government, I brought a private member's motion to state that the moment the first title is issued, they did not. Mr. Speaker, it's on the other paper now. That once it's on the other paper now, that government takes over housing scheme that they abandoned when I brought it here, and it's back on the other paper. Look here, I sent back on the banner about to England.
You may continue your presentation.
Talk about the people them over there. If you want to start the argument, talk about the people them over there. Who have no citizenship.
Mr. Speaker,
You want to talk
I
about
don't.
that?
Discussions about resolutions brought here are neither here nor there. The reality is that Jamaica has a proliferation of schemes that were developed by private developers where the roads are in limbo. And you can't shirk responsibilities as a government by saying, oh, that's the way it is. It's the duty of the government to fix the system if the system is flawed. The fact that you're very bad at fixing systems is no excuse. And it's that failure is replicated in many different areas in terms of how the state interfaces with the population, where there are all sorts of inefficiencies which people suffer from daily and need to be corrected, and you're very poor at correcting it. But the point about this is climate change is not the excuse. It's not an excuse that can absolve you from responsibility for your stewardship of the road network over the last 9 years. Highways have been built. Highways were built by many governments. The North Coast Highway was built by the PNP. The East-West Highway was built by the PNP. The North-South Highway was built by the PNP. So we're not, and you've built some roads too. But the road network, despite the increase in fiscal space, which has been the legacy of the successful execution of the IMF program under the PNP administration of Portia Simpson Miller, after the Bruce Golding administration collapsed this program and couldn't cross it and had to give up on it, couldn't pass any tests. We took it over and we set the groundwork. We did the heavy lifting. That is why the tax system was fixed by a proliferation of tax legislation and administrative changes which have borne great fruit. Where the revenue has increased year.
Member, if you notice your mic is off. I am saying to you, you were given 5 minutes to respond. You have used your 5 minutes. I am going. You were, by the bylaws, you have 5 minutes to respond it. You have used up your 5 minutes. I am going to give you another minute to wrap up and not more.
Thank you for the additional minute, Mr. Speaker. The point of the matter is this. Despite the growth in fiscal space, which is a result of the reforms and the successful execution of the IMF program under the Portia Simpson Miller administration, which has yielded a great legacy to this country, you have not used those resources on the road network. You have used it on a proliferation of other things. And to say that climate change is responsible for all of the potholes in the country is absolute nonsense. And the people don't believe it and they don't accept it. And you're going to pay the consequences of it politically in the months to come.
Mr. Speaker, the member from St. Andrews South, the leader of the opposition, suggested that there was a fiscal arrangement in place that was sufficient to maintain the roads. He suggested that there was a road maintenance fund. Mr. Speaker.
Members, the Prime Minister is on his feet and he would like to relay some information. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member accurately pointed out that there was established a road maintenance fund. The idea behind the road maintenance fund is that there would be a dedicated tax that would go into this fund and that this fund would be used to maintain roads. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the source of the taxation for this fund was a special consumption tax on petrol. On petrol, my recollection. The road maintenance fund. Mr. Speaker. That was the hedge fund. Whoa. Mr. Speaker, the maintenance fund existed for a few years. And undoubtedly, there were some roads that were repaired. In fact, there was an administration set up where requests had to be made to that administration for which roads would be repaired. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, the then government decided that they would use a portion, in fact a significant portion, of this dedicated tax that would go to the road maintenance fund to pay for an oil edge. No, Mr. Speaker.
On a point of order. Prime Minister is incorrect. In the House, a specific tax was imposed for the oil hedge arrangement. A specific special consumption tax was imposed to finance the purchase of the oil hedge. That program was embarked on, and then when the government changed shortly afterwards, this new government kept the tax but didn't keep the hedge in place. So there's been no protection of the public from the increase in oil prices, which was the purpose of the hedge. That is the reality.
Prime Minister.
Just to be clear, Mr. Speaker, they increased the SCT, which should have gone into the road maintenance fund, and the increase was diverted into the edge. Just to be clear, I am not incorrect, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am not incorrect. Then, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition can, in his own conscience, accept if he is incorrect or not. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is always from a good fiscal management point of view, and I keep using this word fiscal, from the proper management of tax revenues, that you do not earmark revenues. Mr. Speaker, earmarking of revenues don't lead to a good outcome. What this administration did, Mr. Speaker, was to abandon the road maintenance fund. Because when you set up an earmark fund, you take a certain percentage of that to manage the fund. You have to pay staff, you have to pay administration. A large part of that fund gets eaten out in terms of just management and administration. The other problem is, Mr. Speaker, is that the funds generated from this special tax was never enough in the first place. In other words, even with the existence of a road maintenance fund, Jamaica's road in 2015, 2014, 2013, and 2011 were in no better condition than they were today. The same protests that existed about bad roads existed then that existed now. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that the road maintenance fund had no impact. What makes the impact, Mr. Speaker? What makes the impact? What makes the impact is not more taxes that you dedicate to a particular cause. What makes an impact is more revenues for which you can properly allocate. That government, Mr. Speaker, all they know to do is to tax, 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 tax. This government, Mr. Speaker, this government generates revenues so that we don't have to tax. It is the revenues, Mr. Speaker, and I want to... Robert, where is the point? The revenues. Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear, Mr. Speaker, that if you were to compare the allocations for this government over our 9 years, prorated to their 4.5 years in their last administration, we have spent far more on road maintenance, road construction, road repair. I also want to make a point. The leader of the opposition can seek to appeal to a base understanding of the challenges. Yes, government must just fix the road, whether it's rain cause it or a breakaway or whatever, fix the road. We accept that. Fix the roads. And that is what we have been doing. But to fix the roads, Mr. Speaker, you must understand why the roads are in the state they are. And Mr. Speaker, you cannot ignore that we had the highest level of rainfall in the last 30 years. That is not something to ignore. It is a reality. We have had more rains now than we have had on average in the last 30 years. So you can't just dismiss that as if to say that had no impact on the roads. Obviously. That's the same administration, the same opposition, who just stood up and said that they are happy that the government is taking climate change seriously because it is having an impact on our economy and our infrastructure. And then now to stand up and say, no, it's not having any impact. You can't have it both ways. You can't flip-flop. You can't on one way say climate change is having an impact and then turn around and say, no, it's not having an impact. You can't flip-flop. Come on. Then now, Mr. Speaker, the highest level of hypocrisy. Mr. Speaker, the member from St. Andrew South mentioned that there are many roads built by developers and the government should just take it over. I have been in this parliament now for 27 years. 27 years. I have not been here as long as the member from Southwest St. Catherine. But I, like that member, brought a resolution to this House when I was in the opposition. Because I had a housing scheme, I have a housing scheme in my constituency, Bay Farm Villas, where several, just like the member from Western. And those roads, Mr. Speaker, were not taken over. And I share the sentiment that the government should take over those roads. And I brought a resolution here, it was debated, and the response from the debate, I'm sure you could search answered, and there was a thorough explanation. It is not that the government doesn't want to take over these roads, but there is a process. A developer could build a road and the road is not built to standard. Should the government just take over the road that is not built to standard? There's a process. The truth is, member, that the process, agreed, that process should have been enforced both by the local government and by the NWA. How do we start to take over that process now? How do we actually start to take over these orphan roads, as I have debated here? First of all, you have to go and properly document these roads. You have to properly measure them, work out the state that they are in, whether or not they were built to standard, what would be required to bring them up to standard. And Mr. Speaker, that is what this administration has done. No other administration has gone to do that thorough accounting of all the roads that we have. This administration has started that process. So from 27 years ago, we've been talking about it since I've been in the parliament, and certainly from before. No other administration has started a process to do it. This administration has started the process to do it. And Mr. Speaker, under the Spark program, there will be some roads, orphan roads, particularly those that now form critical infrastructure, critical connecting corridors, that will be addressed. Mr. Speaker, I take the opportunity because the leader of the opposition, I'm sure other members here in Kingston and St. Andrew will appreciate that there are some roads, for example, in Newport West.
Mr. Prime Minister, you have to speak in the mic for Hansard, so use it both.
Thank you, Mr. Well, one of them isn't. Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there are orphan roads in industrial estates, like Newport West, where those roads are neither owned by the parish council or the NWA, but they are critical infrastructure. That's where quite a bit of our containers and port operations take place. So the government is now obviously in negotiations with the owners of that space to have a kind of joint funding as to how we fix those roads. So it is not that there is no effort, Mr. Speaker, in fixing orphan roads. There are efforts underway, both in terms of how we manage them to bring them onto the government's record and in terms of having public-private partnerships in having them repaired. And I want to give the country the assurance that you will have a proper road management authority. Right now, the management of our roads is fragmented. Some of our roads are managed by parish councils, some are managed by the Ministry of Agriculture as farm roads, some are managed by the NWA, and some are not managed any at all. The intention of the government, as we have signaled with the One Road Authority, is to do a proper accounting of all our roads and bring them under one management. So all of that is being worked on, Mr. Speaker. This administration has done the most for the development and repair of our roads, bar none. And we are very proud of our work. Still a lot more work to be done, but this is the administration to get it done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member.
Mr. Speaker, I have 3 questions for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, in your presentation on the second page, you said to appreciate, I think it is important for the country to appreciate that the state of the roads is not the fault of the government. Then whose fault is it if it is not the fault of the government for not financing road maintenance? As whose fault is it? Yes. Secondly, is it that the revenue from the securitization or parts of the revenue of the securitization from the Norman Manley International Airport through King Air is being used to finance Spark? And thirdly, of the 27,000 kilometers of road network that we have across the island, how many kilometers of roads do you expect to be rehabilitated through Spark?
The current state of the roads is a responsibility of the government. As I have said in my presentation here, we are responsible for the maintenance of the road. Mr. Speaker, the government of Jamaica did not cause Hurricane Beryl, which showered Jamaica with heavy rains, which destroyed many roads, caused many landslides, saturated our soils, caused many roads to break away. The heavy rains that we have had for almost every week since July into November is not the fault of the government. We, however, are responsible. We are responsible. We have control over the public purse. And we have, Mr. Speaker, made the necessary allocations to have the roads repaired. And I have outlined them. $6.5 billion we have made available. We have mobilized the contractors following all the very arduous and elongated procurement processes, and we have followed them to the T to avoid any adverse reports on how the government administers the public funds. Those things take time, and we have maneuvered as efficiently as we could. So, Mr. Speaker, there are things that have happened over which the government has no control, but we have responded. There are persons who would have wanted us, Mr. Speaker, to patch during the rainy season. We just couldn't do that. So now we are in full force patching, and I'm sure every Jamaican is seeing the crews patching right across, and we will continue throughout March to restore the roads to good driving conditions. There are some corridors which we will have to totally resurface. Those we are working on. Mr. Speaker, the other question from the member was... Right. So, Mr. Speaker, again, there is a fixation on revenue earmarking. And I just can't understand it, Mr. Speaker, because it really shows a difference between how this administration manages public revenues and how that administration manages public revenue. The appropriate response to the member is that the revenues from the securitization would have contributed to the overall budget of which the government made an allocation for the Spark program. But there is no earmarking. The overall budget is supported by the revenues from the securitization.
And the reason why I asked the question, Prime Minister, and I mean, we don't have to get hot under the collar, read the whole thing of roads. Because, back to my first question, wouldn't the Prime Minister say that because of the lack of proper planning and funding, which has caused part of why the road network is the way that it is over the last 8 years, why it is that the roads are the way that they are now? Eh? Oh, you have been in power for that, and the Prime Minister is blaming others. And the reason why I'm asking about the securitization...
For your tenure, he's speaking to your tenure. Your tenure.
My memory serves me well. My memory serves me well, Prime Minister. Because you keep on repeating that the financing of Spark is coming from the revenue of the government, that there's no debt in helping to finance Spark. And and my memory serves me well, in the budget, there was a $20 billion from the securitization that would have gone to Spark. So you can look back at it. So I just want to clarify, no, because you keep on misleading the country, that that you're doing it from the revenue of the government, and there is no debt.
No, you need to be honest.
The final question, which you have not. The final question Prime Minister, out of the 27,000 kilometers of road network across the island, how many kilometers of road do you expect to be rehabilitated by Spark?
Good question. Excellent.
Minister, the question you asked regarding is number. The questions you asked regarding the number of kilometers of roads that will be repaired. I have the number of roads, but not the kilometers. I could get that information for you. I would want to hazard a guess as to how much that would be. But I could get that information for you. Mr. You have to turn off your mic.
Member Jackson, turn off your mic, please. Turn on your no. Turn off yours. Yes. Prime Minister, you may turn on yours now. Right.
Both are.
Yeah, both of them.
I can turn both of them
yes.
on.
Good? Yeah. It works. It works.
Mr. Speaker, I will provide the member with the kilometers of roadway. I don't want to hazard a guess as to what that is. I could probably get, Minister, let's work that out and what that is. Minister, the financing of the budget has many different sources. You have tax revenues, you have revenues that come, non-tax revenues that come from the sale of public assets, and revenues that come from various transactions that the government may get involved in. In fact, the government, by virtue of its good management, could securitize future revenues, and that is not treated as debt. And so, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, forgive me, the government employs all because of the position that we are in, we are able to take advantage of the full suite of measures to finance the budget. These options weren't available to some governments before. They are available to this government because of our frugality, from our good management, and so which is what we mean when we say this administration manages the fiscal affairs of the country in such a way as to expand and take advantage of all the opportunities for the benefit of the people. Hence, the Spark program is being funded.
So, I want to, just to enlighten us that when we turn on our mics, when I press the button here, it is a mic that was turned on first that is going to speak. All right?
Yeah, man, I know if I ask questions, Desmond. I have three. The slow pace, which every member of parliament complains about, of the road repairs, in large part is due to the fact that contractors who hitherto would go ahead and undertake repairs, knowing that they would get paid, have decided they are not going to. I would like to know what the total arrears are that are owed by the National Works Agency to contractors. Question number one. Secondly, I represent both residential and business interests on Lady Musgrave, which is one of the roads slated to be dualized and expanded. The residents have spent, and the business interests, have spent a lot of time and resources in developing what I would consider an alternative to what the government is proposing. They want the development, but they want something which is more sustainable, which is less concrete, which is more green, not your green, but more environmentally friendly, right? Let me go again, because this is a serious point, because they have been frustrated by the lack of response from the government. They have invested money in identifying consultants to come here to look at the space. The Lady Musgrave now I'm speaking about. Because their concern is that the dualization, similar to what took place in Barbican Road, does not solve the traffic problem. It actually moves the problem further down. So you widen, it's quicker to get through 4 ways, but when you come back to 2, you have a bottleneck. So they have spent time and resources, they have engaged experts in looking at an alternative, which would have walkways, which would have trees, and they have spent the better part of 2 years. They have been trying to engage NWA without any success. And the response from NWA is that the diest cost and nothing can change. I am asking you as the minister with responsibility for this particular project to engage them. Nobody is against development. They want the development because they want their property values to increase. But they want a development which is consistent with the area, which allows people to walk, people to ride, etc. And they have done extensive work. And they have proposals which I believe can be incorporated into what the government is proposing, which meets the objective. So my ask is for there to be engagement with the group, both residential and business interests. The third question, Prime Minister, notwithstanding the many announcements about Spark, I am unable as a member of Parliament to tell the residents in my constituency when Spark will start for me. Yeah. I have done what I've been asked to do, which is to hold my consultation, submit my 10 roads. I did that from May last year. I know there's a process. You have selected a major contractor. That contractor has to subcontract. But the people in my constituency who drive on Deanery Road, who drive on many of the bad roads, are asking me, when will Spark start? I cannot get an answer from NWA. I can't get an answer from anybody. I would like to know whether it is in this financial year, Whether it is in the next one, I don't know. But we must be able to say, of the 10 roads, I don't know which one you're going to start with. I understand you don't want to start with one that require water and sewage, etc., etc. But again, I've been asking, and I cannot get an answer as to when Spark will start.
All of us.
And I speak, hold on, and I speak on behalf, I think, of everybody here, because even on your side, your MPs complain. And then my final question relates specifically to Arthur Wint Drive. I know that there's a project to expand National Stadium, and I believe there's been a consultancy awarded out of the UK to look at that. Now, what I want to know is, in the expansion of Arthur Wint, I also know the minister had plans for a museum, etc. What I want to know is, are all those things being coordinated? The expansion of the National Stadium, the incorporation of a museum, and the dualization of that to 4 ways, and the impact that it will have on the space that is available. Because frankly, when you think you'd either have to take some of the National Stadium space and reduce the car park, or if you go on the other side, you're going into where the police is and the gully, etc. So I want to know what level of coordination is taking place with those disparate plans to ensure that once you start, there's consistency.